Geordie loves pasta al fiorella. Worf loves liquid polymer, and the Ferengi see the hammer as a sign of sexual prowess. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 6, Episode 16, Birthright, Part 1, written by the Brandon Braga, directed by the Weinrich Colby. This was February 20th, 1993. What a great year. Where were you, everybody, and how are you today, Sirach?
I'm good. I'm good. And I was on that space station that they were showing.
Yes, you were. That's right. We were on like episode maybe 6 or 7 of watching Deep Space Nine, which means you were filming maybe 9 or 10 or something like that.
Is that where we were at this point?
Maybe even more,
Okay.
depending. I don't know what the turnaround was for you guys from like filming to putting it up, but it was probably a couple months, I would think. I don't know. You guys had to hammer those things out fast, so maybe it was just a few weeks.
Yeah.
All right. I know when I mentioned hammer, we're all thinking don't hurt them. Everybody, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate that. And visit us at patreon.com/the7th-rule if you want to be part of the free-for-all or just get all the full episodes and all kinds of goodies, like a roundtable with Walter Koenig. Anyway, Sirach.
Yeah.
We've all held this secret for so long. You said you were filming on you said you were filming on a space station at this time. So were the people of this episode. Did you know about this episode, and what were your first thoughts, first impressions?
No, I didn't know about this episode. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, there's no way that's not Deep Space Nine. As they, as they showed the pylon, the famous DS9 pylon, in the opening scene. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And having got a big shock that this was a DS9 kind of crossover episode. I'm guessing before. I'm wondering when it was filmed. Did they film it around the same time we were filming The Emissary, or
maybe this was after The Emissary, right? Because you got to figure that it came out right around, the 7th episode. So it probably was shot around the 5th, 6th, or 7th episode too. So I was thinking the same thing. I was wondering if maybe you guys had your first like week of vacation or something like that. Like you shot for 6 weeks straight, let's say, or 8 weeks straight, and then you got like a week off or a few days off, or I don't really know how your schedule worked. Maybe that's when they did it, but clearly they coordinated. They were trying to help promote this new show. One thing I noticed, let me ask you before I say it, what did you notice when you saw them walking around? Did you feel nostalgic? Did you feel angry? Like, hey, what the f- are they doing on our turf, man?
No, I felt nostalgic. I feel great. I like seeing them on the promenade. I like seeing them walking around and being involved in the eating areas and stuff that we have. The quartz bar and all of those things. I was like, where am I? That was my, they filmed my little kick it spot with me and Nog when we're always upstairs. Yeah. And I was like, hey, where the hell am I at? And I also didn't realize that there were other crossover episodes outside of the Emissary. I didn't know that Next Generation had its crossovers.
Actually, yeah, Voyager's, no spoilers, Voyager's pilot episode partially also takes place on Deep Space Nine.
Oh,
yeah, again, and they talk to Quark. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, there's
what
always.
What about you? What were you feeling?
Well, what I felt, first of all, was, obviously I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I love it. But I noticed that they went onto Deep Space Nine, but they clearly brought the TNG lighting team, because we were on Deep Space Nine, but we were seeing a lot more of Deep Space Nine than what we're used to, because it was lit. Deep Space Nine was lit like TNG. Suddenly, it was like bright. It was like it was daytime on Deep Space. It was like weird. It was almost like offensive. It was awesome. I loved it, but it was almost like, why is Deep Space Nine so bright? It's cool to be able to like see things a little bit more in detail and see a little further down, but it didn't have the same mood. So it was basically like Deep Space Nine being delivered to you in the mood of TNG, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, because the station's equipped with mood lighting based on who's in the highest ranking officer aboard. So
Nice.
since Picard was on board, they said, we'll give him some Picard lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did notice it was kind of bright on that set. I was like, I noticed that it was brighter than usual, especially on the promenade. And wherever they were walking, I noticed it was a bit brighter. I also, for sure, remember going to visit the Next Generation set, walking around there and seeing how everything was lit on that set. It was so
Really?
much brighter.
So you could sense it. You would go on that thing and everything was more lit.
Everything on the Next Generation set felt like a whole different. It felt like a whole different thing. Yeah, it was like, when you turn the screen up on the contrast and brightness up on your phone. So
yes,
that's what it felt like when you walk inside the Next Generations. You're like, oh wow, I can see everything in here. And then I was wondering, like, how do they keep this place so clean? Like, they must be like painting over chips and things all day, because it's so bright and so pastel-y clean.
yeah.
That I was thinking, man, if I was on this ship, I'd ask people to take their shoes off.
That would be hilarious if Picard goes, number one, and Riker's like, oh, sorry, And then Picard's like, I just use slippers, number one. It's much easier. Yeah, well, it's an interesting contrast in styles, because I felt like Deep Space Nine, the set, was way more detailed. Like there were more, bottles and staircases and things and extras, way more extras and more elaborate extras with all the aliens and all that,
Mm-hmm.
But TNG, they maybe had way less things, like props. But it was so much more lit that they had to make sure everything was perfect. Whereas Deep Space Nine could have these things, and if a chair was scuffed, first of all, the lighting was dimmer, so you wouldn't notice it. And secondly, it's okay. This thing's been through wars. It's a Cardassian old thing. So that actually, some things were probably scuffed on purpose from the art department. You know what I mean? So it's just a very different kind of production design. And it was just kind of noticeable only to me when I saw it more lit, and I'm like seeing the details more. I don't know. I really thought that was interesting, and I loved it. And it's obviously so nice to see it.
Yeah, and I got a sense of some other things too when I was watching. Aside from the lighting issues, which is definitely something that's noticeable, and DS9 looks like it has more details to me than like the Next Generation set.
Mm-hmm.
The Next Generation set is very clean, very bright, and very, organized, but it also doesn't have those ridges and cubby holes and like jagged edges. And
there's nowhere for you and Nog to hide out, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. You're just running down a corridor. There's nothing to hide behind. And DS9, because it has all those angles and lighting features, it does have more character when you look at it on the screen.
Mm-hmm. And adding to that, sorry, no, what were you saying?
No, I got another point, so I want you to finish that.
Yeah, and so then one more point on that is, and I kind of touched on it, was the extras. Next Generation, they'll give you one or two extras. There's somebody at the helm, there's somebody at the computer back there. If you're in engineering, there's somebody that walks by and hands Geordi a pad, There's not a lot going on. There's one or two nurses in sick bay, but in Deep Space Nine, they go for the extras. And I was actually surprised that not only that TNG did not skimp out on it, but they went full force. They had more interesting aliens on Deep Space Nine for this episode than they have almost in any episode ever, because they wanted to like really show Deep Space Nine, pardon the pun, in a good light. And so yeah, I was really impressed with how many different aliens and cool guys that were walking by and all this stuff. That was awesome. They really, didn't want to skimp out. They really did it up, and I loved it.
Yeah, except I did have a little nitpick with that, and that is from the opening scene where Dr. Crusher and Picard are walking down the promenade. There are some extras that are behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize them because, obviously we spend a lot of years together. So I think her name was Mary, the Bajoran woman that was behind. She's been there pretty much the whole 7 seasons as an extra. And you'll see her behind Beverly and Carr.
Yeah.
And then they cut from that walk and talk on the promenade to Geordi and Worf eating in the mess hall, right?
Oh no!
And that same lady and the guy who was walking with her are in that restaurant eating.
That's
and
hilarious.
I'm like, those were prominent extras that were on the camera. They weren't like
they were featured. Yeah.
They were heavily featured in the walk and talk with Picard and Crusher.
That is so Star Trek. I love it.
And then they're heavily featured. They're like right behind Worf and Geordi. I'm like, there's no way they were, unless they were walking to the mess hall. like I was trying to put my head behind it. Like, okay, unless they were walking to the mess hall the time that they were walking behind Picard and Crusher, there's no way they could be seated and eating on the next cut. It has to have been passed or something else. It couldn't just be a direct cut time wise, because there can't be in 2 places at once.
This is a familiar thing to me. I feel like I've heard this before, and I don't remember if it was for this episode or if it was for another one, but I think it was maybe another one. Yeah, where it's like there's an extra or two in this one scene in engineering, and then it's like literally cut to with no time in between them in a different place. And so it's not even like you could explain it away like, oh, well, they just, it's the next day. No, it's like literally there's extras here, cut to Beverly Crusher in sickbay, the extra is there. But this is like on a space station and on a ship. Wow, that's unbelievable.
Well, I thought Worf and Geordi were having lunch on the station though, because it had to have been in order for those same 2 extras to be still on the. I think they're because those extras are basically DS9 extras. That's what I'm trying to say. Those are reoccurring background.
Yeah, I love that
on DS9.
Because I did wonder about that. I did wonder. I said, there's no way they're going to bring TNG extras to portray all of these background characters that are on Deep Space Nine. They just gave them that day of work from Deep Space Nine. They're like, we need Alexander Siddig and 14 of your best extras. I want to see Uridians. I want to see Bajorans. I want to see everything. And Morn was there.
Morn was there.
That was cool.
Morn was macking. So okay, look at Morn getting his mac on. Macking a Bolian girl. But yeah, that was my little nitpick with the set dressing. Now, having said that, the thing that stood out to me almost instantly was the fact that DS9 has a certain level of life and energy that is aboard it because of the extras.
Yeah.
Because it's like a community feel. It has a certain vibrational life force to it that I wish we could have seen more utilization of that on the other shows. It could have easily have been a place where For example, the Voyager cast is often there hanging out, and the Next Generation is often there.
Yeah, interesting.
It could have been a depot place where a lot of the crossovers happening multiple times, not just in in a one-off episode. Just because I feel like the energy it's synergetic when you see the two crossover.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the background actors, they do give it life. They give it like well, it's the ambiance. It's a different kind of ambiance. Whereas the background actors in TNG, it's different. It's more reserved, more professional, kind of held back.
And the other aspect of the space station that I like, that I just, it took this episode for me to kind of really see it when you compare the styles, uh, storytelling from Next Generation to DS9. But one of the things that I noticed also was when you're on Next Generation's ship, every time there is a villain, there is a guest star, or whatever, that person has to be encountered by the ship. So it's always like, we run into this vessel, sir. We're being hailed,
Right.
right? Or we're going to this planet surface to visit the Gargalians or whatever. And that's so you have to engage into the diplomacy. You have to go and meet the person. It's always a moment of like, oh, there's Captain, there's a ship on screen.
Right.
And
Whereas Deep
in
Space Nine,
Deep
there's
Space Nine,
5,000 people there, in
yeah,
and out constantly. Possibilities are
right.
endless.
Possibilities are endless. You don't have to run into a ship. You don't have to.
Right.
There's no
You don't need
like,
to explain some reason why this person's there, because DNG,
yeah,
you're right. They do that every single time. We're rendezvousing with the USS Hood, or we're picking up
yes,
2 ambassadors from this planet, or we're taking leave on this cluster.
yes,
That's a good point.
yes. We're patrolling the nebula, and then we ran into this anomaly. It's always something that you kind of have to explain, that you've encountered. It has to have a background. Well, what would this Romulan ship be doing in this sector? And da 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 da. And there's a whole backstory of finding that out. In With DS9 as a space station and having so many characters that are just aboard, you don't have to like they don't need to be identified right away. You can get a character like the Uridian that we had in this
Yes.
episode that approached Worf, who doesn't need any explanation. It's not like, oh, he's on a freighter ship. We found this freighter ship floating in the southern such and such sector, and there's no explanation. It's just a random guy walks up. He's an alien, obviously, and he's got some information. He's got a story to tell, and boom, we're right into the action. It doesn't require any kind of initial diplomacy, intervention, rendezvous. It's just like some guy taps you on the shoulder and it's like, excuse me, can I talk to you? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like we're right into the action.
And uh, this is the moment, I think, to tell you, Sirach, that my love for Bolians. Uridians are one of my favorite aliens as well. I would say those are my top 2 Star Trek aliens. Maybe you could toss in the Vorta as well, but they're more developed. These are kind of like underdeveloped. But Uridians, what's cool about them, there's not a lot known. I mean, you can always recognize them because they have that pruny face. I think it's cold on Uridia. And and what they are is information smugglers. Like the Ferengi, they deal with, Latinum and they whatever weapons and trade. The Uridians are information smugglers. And that's why every time you see a Uridian, you see Riker like roughing them up for information, or somebody or Worf roughing them up for information, or them coming up to you and saying, I can get you. I know something about you. Anyway, and this particular one was played by one of my favorite actors ever, the 6'7" giant
Wow.
James Cromwell. He's played a lot of roles in Star Trek, most notably as Zephram Cochrane in
Okay.
Star Trek First Contact. My favorite role of his, of course, was as the police officer in an episode of Three's Company. He was a very tall police officer. But anyway, not that tall people can't be police and short people can be police. But I just remember when I was a kid watching Three's Company reruns, going like, "Man, that is a tall." Like I couldn't get around it. I'm like, I'm distracted by how tall he is. I'm trying to pay attention to the storyline of like, oh, Jack Tripper just wrestled with an ironing board or whatever. But I'm just like, why is that guy so tall? Anyway, he's an amazing actor. And he played a Uridian in this episode, which is one of my favorite aliens. Lots of fun. That's one of the reasons I like this episode so much.
I thought he was fantastic in this, and you know how what made me think that is that there were I didn't really know the actor who plays, right, so I just blind look at the performance and say, okay, let's see how
Right.
good this performance is. It's kind of better that I don't know the actor, because then if I did, I would probably have certain expectations, look for mannerisms. But because I don't know what it is, I'm just like, let me just judge the performance on what I see. And as I was watching him, I was thinking, this guy reminds me of a very good actor by the name of Rene Auberjonois.
Yeah, I could see that. Very similar, gruff kind of demeanor. Serious, gruff, willing to lose themselves in the character, but their overall feeling is gruff, professional. Right? Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and sometimes even like like a smart ass to some degree, right? There was a moment there when he was like, "I suggest you take a nap," or something. So so I was like, "Wow, this guy is a fantastic actor." So I'm glad you named him Mr. James Cromwell, and obviously Zach he played Zach Efron on Baywatch.
Wait, what?
No. He said he played Zach Efron.
Oh, Zephram Cochrane.
Oh,
got to be careful saying that name. Zephram Cochrane, the inventor of warp drive. He's also an Emmy Award winner for the movie Babe. That'll do, pig.
That'll do, pig. Yeah, he was fantastic in that.
All right, well, let's take a break. Let's recover from our jokes. And we're going to talk about how awesome this episode is or isn't. Because so far we've talked about Deep Space Nine. We've talked about the actors. We've talked about the aliens and the background and the lighting. But what did Cirroc Lofton think about this episode upon his first viewing? We'll be right back with that answer on The Seventh Rule.